everybody. Welcome to another edition of Sports Wrap. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Madmouth. And before I introduce my special guest, I have a different type of voice, and I'll tell you why. Because unfortunately, during the week, we lost four important people. And I do want to pay our respects to those individuals off the bat. First, two-time Grammy Award winner Chuck Mangione passed away. Rest in peace, Chuck. Second, Malcolm Jamal Warner, known for he died in a drowning accident. He died at the age of 54. Theodore Huxtable on the Cosby Show. Unfortunate, he was actually swimming with his daughter that was 8, and life ended way too soon. Everybody knows about the popular Ozzy Osbourne. I believe he died from Parkinson's, if I understand correctly. And finally, Hulk Hogan passed away at the age of 71 due to cardiac arrest. So I want to just reach out to those individuals. One thing to have to deal with these deaths, but to have four within a matter of a few days, it's a lot to deal with. So if you wonder why I'm coming on with a much more softer voice, rest in peace for all you individuals. And we appreciate everything that you brought to our world over the last many years in your own different ways. But that said, now I appreciate a guy who's in our world. Is a guy that I work with the Florida Panthers for the 1 year I covered the team in person. A man that worked with the Fisher Report, now works with my friend George Richards over at the Florida Hockey Now. George is one of my best friends out there, and a guy that I view as like a family member. His name is Alan Greenberg. Alan, thank you very much for being on Sports
My
Wrap.
pleasure.
So why don't you give everybody a little bit of intro about yourself? I know you've been covering hockey forever.
I've been covering hockey since, let's put it like this, the original 6 days at Madison Square Garden, when you got in for 50 cents if you had a student ID card. It's always been a passion for me. As I said, I've been watching since Gump Worsley and Jacques Plante were in goal. I happened to be at the game when Jacques Plante introduced his mask. So that's a bit of history there. But I've been following the game, obviously, for something like 70 years. I've been, as an avocation, I've been a writer covering hockey for 40-odd years. I loved it. It's a passion. I've been doing it for years and years. My day job, while all this was going on, is that I put in 39 years with the federal government. I'm proud to say that I retired pretty high up on the ladder. I worked along the way with Congress, with presidents, with judges, with a lot of important people. And I also worked with a lot of industry people and things like labor unions and other, I used to call them garden variety con men, but I was everywhere. And if I might give a little bit of a plug along the way, after I retired, this was strictly a labor of love, but I wrote a couple of books. One is called Confessions of a Government Man. It's basically humorous stories about what I call funny happenings in high places of government, a lot of behind the scenes stuff with very important people. And I wrote another book later on during the pandemic when I wasn't spending my time with Scott. I had a lot of time to spare, so I put together another book. It's called Brooklyn to the Beltway. What it is some more stories about high places in government, funny stories, and a compilation of stories and anecdotes about growing up as a streetwise kid in Brooklyn, New York. And that's about it. That was a fun thing. It was strictly a labor of love. Wasn't meant for a living to make money or anything. Any money I get out of it, I donate to charity anyway. So that was a labor of love. But here I am. Hockey is, all these years later, I still love hockey. I love going to the games. I love covering the games.
Let me tell you something. You talk about Jacques Plante introducing the face mask. I wrote a story on him many years ago when he was in Fort Lauderdale at a place called the Penalty Box Lounge on Federal Highway. And I actually met Jacques Plante and wrote a story for the Hallandale Digest about that same thing. And now you're talking about it. Really? Seriously? Really? There's a reason why I go ahead and mention these. And it's really, seriously, really, what a coincidence that you
Interesting enough, years later, when I began doing media work for several publications, as well as the NHL and Hockey News, I spoke to the guy who was at that time, today we call him the E-Bug, the emergency backup goalie. But at that time, every team had to have a spare goalie to use in case either goalie got hurt, because there was only one goalie without a mask. And there was a fellow named Joe Schaefer who worked for the Rangers. He was an amateur goalie. He was maybe in his high 30s, 40 years old at the time. He didn't look anything like an athlete. And he was the guy that would have replaced Plante if he didn't come back into the game. And I interviewed him maybe 20 years later. And he said to me he was all dressed and ready to go. Plante would not go back in the game unless he wore the mask. and told Blake had the choice. It was Joe Schaefer without a mask or Jacques Plante with a mask.
Wow.
The rest was history.
Oh,
That's a great story. That
Isn't it?
I didn't know the exact story behind it, and if I did, I was too young to know about it. But I do have the story somewhere at home. Not exactly sure, but that is unbelievable, folks. This is what you're going to get tonight. We got a guy that's been covering it 50 years. I've been around the game my whole life as an original six guy. George Drythorne's been around it his entire life, and I got a guy like Cody Spink on the West Coast who's going to have a great career covering hockey. He's off to a whale of a start. In fact, Cody, what I want you to do, and I normally don't do this an awful lot, but I'm going to do it now. I want the national audience to know exactly what you're doing at the beginning about your royally quacked, and let everybody know what you're doing on the West Coast, and you'll have to have a chance to talk about it later. Go ahead, Code.
No, yeah. So me and my dad, we co-host a Ducks Kings podcast together. Like I said, I've been a Ducks fan my whole life. I crushed my dad's dreams by being a Ducks fan, but we lived in Orange County, so what can I say? Grew up with the Mighty Ducks movies, so of course I'm gonna be a Ducks fan. My mom worked at Disneyland and everything, so it was just meant to be for me. But I guess I've always loved going to hockey games. I love talking about hockey, and honestly, it's one of my favorite sports to watch on TV and live. It's a lot of people may talk crap. I'm like, oh, it's boring, but they've never been to a game live. And once they go, I tell them to go live and they see a game live, they're hockey fans. So I guess, I mean, who doesn't want to see a bunch of guys flying down the ice? You don't know where the puck is. They're hitting each other. They're fighting each other. It's a beautiful game. I love covering it. I've been blessed to, see players like Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne and Ryan Getzlaf and J.S. Shiger, those are the players I looked up to my whole life. So
great stuff. Well, I want to make sure you got that intro in there because Alan didn't know you. Now Alan has a chance to get to know you a little bit. George and I do, so it's good to be able to get you have an opportunity to get that into it. We got a busy agenda tonight. So if this show gets a little bit long, no problem. I'm going to take advantage of Alan as long as I can because he's only been in the business forever. And I'm glad that Alan's going to give us an opportunity to take advantage of him tonight. He's a great friend and he knows a lot. So, all right, let's get to it. We're going to begin with a trade that was revisited. Then we're going to revisit a trade that occurred on July 22nd of 22. The Florida Panthers received Matthew Tkachuk and a 2025 fourth-round pick that turned out to be Mads Kongsback Kilvo. I hope I didn't badger that up too bad, Alan. In return, Calgary gets Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, Cole Schwint, and a 2025 first-round pick that amounted to Cullen Potty. So, we'll keep a note that Matthew Tkachuk will be missing the beginning of the season due to an injury. So how much does that matter? Alan, first of all, I want you to size up the trade in general and give me your perspective. And then the second part of the question, Alan, will be the actual, they're going to miss them a whole lot beginning of the year. Go ahead.
Well, originally I didn't know what to think because the Panthers had won the President's Trophy. Huberdeau finished second in the league in scoring. And I knew Matthew Tkachuk was a great player, but being out in Calgary, I really didn't see him very much. So I didn't know all that much about him. And I can't say I was originally crazy about the trade. But once you saw, because Huberdeau, just as a side issue, Huberdeau loved Florida. He wanted to spend his whole career there. So, I mean, he was really shaken by the trade. But once Matthew Tkachuk came, along with some other deals that Bill Zito made right away, including bringing Patrick Hornquist in, it changed the total culture of the team. They forgot about racehorse hockey and becoming winning the President's Trophy because it did them no good. They built a playoff team, and they built it around Tkachuk because he is just an incredible player. And you can see he's an in-your-face type of guy, and he irritates everybody. And he's certainly an impact player. And that trade changed the entire franchise around.
Well, Joshua Doris states out here the transfer to Panthers. Everyone thought it was a terrible trade at the time. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You heard it from Alan, and now Joshua put it in his own words. But I think we're pretty much agreeing there. So, George, some thoughts about the trade?
Well, yeah. I mean, what is he? 6'2", 202. This guy is. What the Panthers did is, like you said, Alan, spot on. You build a team to last in the playoffs. The trick is not to, and the magic is not to come home with the President's Trophy. Yeah, you want to win every night. We know that. But I mean, and that the trophy's that's for another thing about being at a jinx. I don't believe in jinxes, but the fact of the matter is the Panthers, yeah, when you look at their stats and their leaders, I mean, this guy is a true leader. 52 games this past year, 22 goals and 35 assists, 57 points, -3 in the plus minus, 54 penalty minutes. He's an agitator. He goes in there, he goes in the corner. He's not afraid to muck it up with anybody. Those are the kind of guys you need. Like you said, when you build a winning team, when you build a Stanley Cup team, I think it was a great trade for Florida, especially with getting a man Tkachuk of such talent.
It just
Cody,
says
go ahead.
go ahead, Cody.
Oh, I'm definitely one of those people that I thought this was a stupid trade by Florida. I thought Calgary easily won this trade, and I'm definitely one of those idiots that thought that. But I mean, just look what happened since then. They've 3 straight Stanley Cups, and he just brings that drive, that passion, that fighting spirit. That's someone that you want. And honestly, I'm glad he's not in the Pacific Division anymore So, and I'm pretty sure even my dad would say that too, because I know him and Drew Doughty did not like each other. So, but like I said, what Florida's doing is crazy. I love what I'm like I said, I'm surprised Bill Zito did not win GM of the year.
I'm surprised also.
That was my number 1 pick.
An interesting observation. The kind of team that Zito built for the Panthers, that they won 2 back-to-back Stanley Cups. They won the Cup this year. Sam Reinhart led the team in scoring. He was, I think, number 34 in the NHL in scoring. Now, when did a Stanley Cup winning team have a guy leading who was that low? It just shows what kind of depth they have and how the scoring is spread out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, balance. All about balance scoring. You're right. Good point.
Well, the only thing I'll say is I'll go back to what Josh Fedor said. I'll reiterate the trade transformed the Panthers. Everyone thought it was a horrible trade at the beginning. But here's the thing. I learned early in my age covering sports that I've been told by numerous GMs. There's 3 ways to look at the trade, Alan, George, and Cody. 1, the immediate effect, right? Is it one of those win now deals? Then the short term and then the long term. And that's what you've got here in a situation like this. Keep in mind, the Panthers practically backed into the playoffs that first year when they made it to the finals, and they were on house money, and they can thank Sergei Bobrovsky. And of course, Alan Lyons was replaced at the time by Bobrovsky to get in, but then we all know what they proceeded to do that. So the first impressions meant anything, which they do a lot of times. This wasn't good, but boy, how has it turned out? And going back to what Cody said, yeah, why Zito didn't win the GM of the year, to me, it almost seems like it reminds me of Highlight being fixed, and that's all I'll say. And that's a little drastic, but that's the only different comment that I can really bring to the whole thing. We have a lot of topics to get to, and we'll continue to roll it. Future of Sergei Bobrovsky, Mr. Greenberg. He has another year or so, getting a little bit older. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is the last year of his contract. He makes $10 million. If you remember, the first 2 years were not all that successful. The first 2 or 3 years were not all that successful. For a while, he actually lost his job at times to Spencer Knight, to Chris Drieger, to Alex Lyon. But, of course, the last 2 years, he has just been in mid-career form. And no matter what happens this year, I'm sure he's going to be rewarded at least. I can't say he's 37 now, I believe. So at age 38 or 39 or 40, I don't know that he's a $10 million goalie, but I'm sure that Zito is going to want to keep him around and as long as he could play and reward him for everything he's done for the team. Now the cap goes up again next year or the year after. There's a big jump in the cap, so they should be able to handle it.
That's true, too. I forgot about the fact that the salary cap is going to go up. So, yeah, they could probably absorb the hit. The fact that they were able to keep those 3 players, Marchand, Ekblad, and I think it was Bennett, is remarkable in its own right. And now, of course, now you have a little bit of the NHL getting the cap, and then you'll be able to keep the goaltender. But I got to imagine that they have a succession plan for goaltender of the future. I thought it was initially Spencer Knight, but when you acquire Seth Jones, I thought Spencer Knight, but you have to give up a good player in order to get one, and that's what they had to do.
I'm sure Zito will be combing the market as he always does. Seth Jones, I can't say enough about that acquisition. That was amazing. and to have him on a friendly contract for another, I don't know how many more years, but he's around for a while. It wasn't a rental.
I'll put it to you this way. Bill Zito, a.k.a. Albert Einstein. Okay, we'll go from there. And I wanted to actually call Neil Smith Albert Einstein the other day, but I ended up calling him, let's see, who did I end up calling him? David Copperfield last night on the air, and Theo Epstein. So I had to, and I'll tell you one thing with what he's had to deal with out in New York. Those are some analogies. I know it was a great interview I had with Neil Smith. We won't get into the specifics of that, but if you want to find that, call it to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. You can get all of it. All right, George. Some thoughts about Bobrovsky.
Well, yeah, I think you got to hang on to him as long as you can. I mean, the magic is working. My goodness. He started his career with the Flyers, and back then, I think his first season, he was like 915 as far as the save percentage. Okay, that's when he started as a rookie. Last year, this just completed Stanley Cup year, 906. This man is consistent. This man is a winner. This man racks up those wins. He's the kind of goalie that you like, the kind of goalie you want to keep around. And I mean, I know when people get old, the tendency is to shove them off and let them go somewhere else, and you don't want to give them a lot of money. That's not just hockey, but all sport. But this guy is magic. And this guy, you got to hang on to him. He is doing marvelous work between the pipes. He is really, really a great goaltender. And the Panthers, hopefully they can work something out. I mean, at least extend him a couple more years. I don't know how many years this agent and he are going to want, but yeah, I would say we got to keep him around, definitely, Scott.
Well, I'll say one thing guaranteed about Bobrovsky. His number will be retired, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if statues down the road, too. Go ahead.
Right into Stanley Cups. It should be.
Yeah.
He'll be joining Roberto Luongo up in the rafters before it's all said and done. The Panthers do a good job, though, with all due respect when it comes to retiring numbers. As for the Miami Marlins, well, they don't have one yet. And we'll leave it at that. All right. There's a Gerard Gallant sighting, okay? And then he has been hired as the next head coach of the Kunlun Red Star of the KHL. He has a career record of 369, 262, and 70 with a 576 mark. And he obviously coached in the NHL from 2003 to 2023, a Jack Adams Award. Let's face it, he had a short time here, Alan. But what are your thoughts about Gerard Gallant? Well, he's coaching in Russia.
It should be interesting. Gallant, when he was in Florida, the players loved him. He was a players coach. The media loved him. He was a good guy, always cooperative, fun to be with. And the team did reasonably well under him. I don't remember the stats, but they had a marked improvement. They did make the playoffs 2016. They hadn't made it in about 4 years. His pattern, interestingly, and I don't know how to figure this out, is between Florida, Vegas, the Rangers, is he does very well. But then all of a sudden something happens and he runs into disfavor. I think one of the reasons might be, this is only my analysis, I can't say that this is really true, he's more of a working class lunch pail type of guy. He's not into analytics. He's not into the mathematicians running teams. He's just a working class type of guy. And that's what he expects of his players. And sooner or later, he's run afoul of his bosses. I mean, look what happened in Florida. The guy improves the team, brings them back into the playoffs, and then they leave him to take a taxi cab back to the airport when the night that they fired him, and that classic picture. So I don't know what's going to happen in Russia, but I certainly wish him the best. He's a good coach, a good guy.
Yeah, Neil Smith gave me that full story. It was pretty interesting. You ever heard of Billy Martin, you being a New York guy?
Yeah, fired and rehired about 5 times.
Yeah, well, okay. Gerard Gallant reminds me of that. I have a story that I'm probably not proud to say, but the day that Billy Martin got killed, I ended up tearing my ankle up on Christmas Day in a skiing accident up in Magic Mountain. So anytime I need to go ahead and find out when I got busted up in New England, I always Google a Billy Martin. And if that isn't good enough, if I want to go out there and talk about my medical history out in this broadcast, every time I think of my back surgery, all I have to do is Google up Michael Jackson and Farrah Fawcett, and then I know what year that is. So I'm not getting into a medical history lesson, but Gerard Gallant, Billy Martin, what do they have in common? David Copperfield. They disappear and then they reappear. Oh, and David Copperfield seems to be getting on my show a lot yesterday because I brought him up yesterday, Neil Smith, and I get to do it again today. Alan, this is sign you never saw me because I'm a little bit more toned down over next to you. I didn't want to go ahead and chase you away. You're one of the few people that can tolerate me talking here every 2 seconds. All right, Icor, go ahead with it.
Yeah, I've always been a good fan of his. I mean, he was a tough guy as a player here in Detroit. And then his coaching job, like you guys mentioned, okay, so Columbus Blue Jackets, Florida, of course, you mentioned Vegas and the Rangers. And the consistency there is that, unfortunately, the postseason has really been his Achilles heel, missing the playoffs. I know at least 2 times with the Blue Jackets. And then I think he went out in the first round, his best appearance in the playoffs for the Panthers. And then Vegas, of course, they lost the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, he got them all the way to the finals for crying out loud. And then in the next season, he lost in the first round. They fired him. And of course, the Rangers that you mentioned already. Now, they lost in the conference finals. Then he lost in the first round. He is one of those guys that you bring in and you hope to get the best from your players and that. But he does have that, you called it a lunch bucket type of personality, Mr. Greenberg, and I'm not going to disagree. Scott made the reference to Billy Martin. I mean, that fiery personality that some players just don't like, and when you look at it, it's hard to argue with his record because 2 or 3 years and then he's gone from these teams. All I'm saying is that I do wish him well in Russia, the KHL. That's a great, Sergei Fedorov, there's other people that have done really well in the KHL. And, I hope he gets another chance in the NHL. But I wish him well in Russia. It's not going to be an easy assignment, and especially the tension we have with world relations, what's going on. But listen, if anybody can do it, it'll be Gallant.
What are your thoughts, please?
No, yeah, I hated him right away just because he took the Golden Knights and just demolished us Ducks fans right away and took the Golden Knights to the Stanley Cup, just as George said, in the very first season for the Golden Knights. And like I said, I thought he was a great coach. It seems like success followed him, even though, after a while teams got tired of him. And as Trouba says, it's a ritual to get fired out of as a Ranger. It's a ritual there. So, but I'll say great coach. I wish him the best in the KHL, and it's probably the 3rd best league in the world. Yeah. I would say.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that people have to understand about Mr. Gallant. He built the Vegas Golden Knights from scratch. He was the original coach. Yeah. And when you win as an original coach, let me tell you something. That speaks volumes about the guy. Why he didn't last. I felt bad he didn't win it in Vegas, to be honest with you, because he had so much early success. All right, let's move things along. Dave Maloney is named the new TV color analyst of the New York Rangers. Will join Kenny Albert. Since I have a Rangers guy on here, Mr. Greenberg, what are your thoughts about that pairing?
Oh, it sounds pretty good. I mean, Dave Maloney he bleeds Ranger blue. I mean, I remember Maloney as a 17 or 18-year-old rookie. And coincidentally, I think I was the last guy to interview him as a Ranger for an article in what was then the Rangers program when teams had their own programs. But he knows his hockey and he knows the Rangers, and he's not afraid to speak objectively either. And of course, Kenny Albert, he's the family tradition. He's one of the best.
Well, Kenny Albert's a good friend of mine, and I was thankful that I had the opportunity to bring him on the Motor City Mad Mouth show. I've known Kenny for a while. We go back to when I covered the All-Star game in Tampa. He was gracious of his time then. I saw him at a convention a few years ago. He kept his word, came on my show. Awesome guy. But one thing people have to understand about Kenny Albert, not only is he a great broadcaster and a Hall of Fame broadcaster in his own way, but he's a good family man is what he is too. I'm going to tell you something. That's the one thing that tends to get overlooked. He's a very even-keeled, level-headed family man. He knows his profession. He's a good family man, and you just don't make him a whole lot better than Kenny Albert. We also know, obviously, the son of the legendary Marv Albert and also related to Al Albert. But Kenny Albert is A1 in my book. All right, George and Cody, some quick thoughts on them, and we're going to keep this rolling.
Yeah, I've always appreciated the talents and the abilities of Dan Maloney. He's a good guy, good hockey mind, and I do think that when he's given the opportunity to do something in the coaching ranks or even back in any other scouting ranks or with management, whatever he's involved in, he's always got the respect of a lot of people. I know that a lot of general managers around the league know that he earns it. He earns it. He doesn't slouch around. He earns it. So I'm happy for that. And he's a guy that, like I said, he's an NHL lifer, and I like that about him.
Cody.
As a West Coast person, we really don't get much of that kind of television out here, so I can't really delve into this as much as you guys can. But like I said, I hope he does well there, and I wish him the best.
Okay, no problem. Fair enough. I've said my piece about him. All right, now we have a title. Charles Barkley loves the NHL due to no load management. And he's been vocal about it, as Charles is. And by the way, and listen from the microphone, I have a picture of Charles and myself in there. Why? I did not love a guy that speaks his mind. And when I talked to Neil Smith on last night's edition of Motor City Man Mouth, he's pretty impressed by Charles' liking of the NHL, as we call it, the frozen pond. So, all right, Alan, Charles is sold on the NHL. What are your thoughts about Sir Charles liking this sport?
I don't know. I may have to pass on this one. I don't know too much about Sir Charles, except when I occasionally see him on TV. I know he's got a sense of humor. I know he likes the cameras and all of that. So, and his commentary, however irreverent it might be, seems to go places. I can't really comment on anything Barkley says. I don't really follow him that closely.
Well, that's good enough. But let me rephrase the question. What are your thoughts about the fact that the NHL does not have load management, and that's been the Achilles heel for the NBA? Let's just put it in those terms.
Well, when you say load management, you want to be a little clearer on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The NBA will deliberately rest their players. The NHL guys,
okay. Sure. Look, it won the Panthers a Stanley Cup by resting players, and it's standard procedure now. It's a long season. What would you say?
Yeah, but in the Panthers case, I know that they were injured a lot and they have a lot of depth. But I see where you're coming from. The NBA would sit players out when they had a nationally televised game that was bad for the league. And that's the only place I was going with it. And that's where Sir Charles tends to be a bit more critical.
Okay. But I'm not really familiar with that issue.
But that's okay. No, that's okay. I understand that. But the fact that when Neil Smith heard about it, he was pretty impressed that Charles took such a liking to the sport because of the fact of that. Let's put it to you this way. The NHL has a much better blue-collar work ethic than the NBA. And I'll leave it in those layman's terms. Okay. All right, George, you're in a blue-collar town.
Yeah, Charles is outspoken. We all know that. He says different things but it's interesting that he did this about the NHL. And I really think that he's right. Hockey players have been known to play through some nagging injuries and things that maybe at least in the old days, as we remember, when you had a smaller roster and a smaller league, a lot of those games were played with injured players. It has gotten a little bit more sophisticated now, obviously, with calling up guys from the minor leagues at a last minute notice if you've got a couple of stars or one or whatever out. But he's right. Charles Barkley is right. The NBA has that problem. That load management issue is not good. Hockey, on the other hand, has been doing very well, thank you. Now, guys get hurt, of course they do, but they're eager to get back in the lineup. We all know that, and they could take a hike, as far as I'm concerned. Some of those NBA players that want to have that kind of time off, let's say, during the regular season. I don't like it, and I don't think you'll see that among many, if any, NHL guys. I'm glad he spoke up about it.
What are your thoughts, Cody?
Well, as a former athlete myself, I hate sitting out games. Even healthy or not, I want to be playing on that field. I want to be fighting with my team. This is probably why I love hockey so much, is because if I'm working my butt off to make money, and if I'm going to spend this much money on tickets, I want to see the best players. Right. So with hockey, I know I'm going to see the best players every night there, and I love that. And I that's why I think that hockey players should get paid a lot more. They go through a lot more, hits, that hockey puck, they're going constantly and everything like that. And basketball, I feel like, has just gotten lazier and lazier over the years. Like, it's totally a different game now, and they're still wanting rest time. But hockey's just getting more and more pumped and everything like that. So, like I said, the Four Nations, like, I think that's what really changed everything, because you think, everyone thought like this, hey, it's just the Four Nations, who cares? But no, these guys came to play when it came to this, and like it showed right away from that Sweden-Canada game. We saw right away, nope, they're playing to play. They're playing to win. They're not just, it's like not like the All-Star game. No, and I think that changed everyone. They saw how these hockey players were. They wanted to fight every last second. And that's, like I said, I love that. And I love that Charles Barkley noticed that. Like I said, I listened to that interview. I believe that was with the Spittin' Chicklets. I believe that's when he came out and said that.
Yeah, Charles Barkley's A1 in my book. All right, I'll tell you what. Let's change the narrative a little bit to a guy by the name of Warren Buffett. I put this on last night, so we're going to have a little bit of fun with this particular one-liner. Okay, Alan, obviously, we know words of wisdom probably matter a lot to you, so if anybody can appreciate where Warren Buffett's coming from, it'd be you. Of course, we all probably can. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. What do you think about that?
He's absolutely right, especially in the age of social media. One slip up, one error, and the whole world knows about it, whether it's intentional or not. Got to be very careful. I remember I was talking one-on-one with Paul Maurice at the beginning of last season. I was doing it on behalf of my buddy Stan Fischler, and he mentioned to me that part of coaching and part of being in the public eye is assuming that every single thing you say is going to be all over the place, be it in the media or be it in your players or anything else. So you've got to be absolutely very careful whatever you say and whatever you do. Perception is just as important as reality.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I mentioned last night in the show. I'll be consistent. Here's another thing that backs it. Everybody talks about Al Campanis on NBC News Nightline, talking about the inability for African Americans to become managers. How quickly did he get fired?
About 30 seconds.
Exactly. That backs Buffett's point. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, and that's just one of many, many instances where you really got to watch your tongue. There could be other things that go on. But listen, the fact of the matter is that, yeah, you got to be extra careful. But social media is out there. They're like they're like good and bad, good and evil, if you will. Sometimes they're good when you're trying to get your message across, but it could turn the other way, like you said, if indeed you twist something around or you say something that you later regret. And I've done it too. I mean, emails that you send to somebody and you really should have cooled your temper a little bit, thought through it a little bit before you sent it. But especially with posting things in as we do now in this society and going through Twitter and Facebook and whatever else we're using, so many of them out there, of course. I do think that Buffett's onto something with that statement. It is very interesting, but yeah, it can happen to any of us. So we got to be extra careful out there, whether you're in sports or not.
I could tell you a funny story. As I mentioned earlier on, my daytime job and my career, I used to have a habit of making humorous notes on pieces of correspondence. And then Freedom of Information came along, where any piece of government paper is available. And a TV station was doing an expose on a project that I was on, which, by the way, found absolutely no improprieties. But anyway, I made this rather sarcastic comment pertaining to a federal judge, chief judge. Well, it ended up on 60 Minutes.
Oh,
and
boy.
Oh, kidding,
I thought my career was over.
Wow.
But the judge took it with a sense of humor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're kind of fortunate. Yeah, I think you were definitely fortunate in that situation for sure.
I never made a comment on a piece of paper again.
Well, I'm glad. All I can say, Ellen, is I'm glad it worked out. Cody?
No, that's definitely a lesson learned right there.
Yeah.
I agree with this statement 100%. Look what just happened over the weekend, the Coldplay concert. CEO build up his whole thing, and then it's gone with one flash of a camera. So, I agree with it. That's why, when I try to post stuff, it's just nothing bad, nothing like that. When it comes to politics, I stay out of all of that. I unfollow them No reason to get into anything like that. You got to watch what you say. I 100% agree. So I'm one that's always usually try to play it safe especially on social media.
Smart man. Okay, well, the only thing I'll say about it is Al Campanis lost 40 years of employment because he made one big gap, and Ted Koppel did everything he could to save him, but it wasn't enough. I think I actually mentioned that as a story in my book. We'll continue on. You want to talk about the ultimate win-win trade? I'll give it to you, but we're going to have to go back to July 10th, 1957 to find this one. And that's this. It's a trade revisited. Terry Sawchuk, acquired by the Red Wings in exchange for Johnny Bucyk, 2 Hall of Famers. What are your thoughts about this one? I know you're able to remember this one, Alan.
Well, not 100%. I mean, Sawchuk was playing long before I started following the game. But to refresh my memory, when I saw your topic, I took a look, and of course, it was a win-win trade. Bucyk, when he was with Detroit, he played a couple of years part-time. I guess he was a young fellow. He scored a handful of goals, not very many. Right. Then he was traded to Boston. He was there for something like 20 years. He scored more than 500 goals. Sawchuk was originally with Detroit during their Stanley Cup dynasty years. He was traded to Boston. I think it had something to do with a disciplinary issue with his involvement with the union or the Players Association, something like that. He went there as a punishment. He eventually went back to Detroit, had maybe 6 or 7 more good years with Detroit. I think they did win one other cup with Sawchuk, but then in his later years he bounced around the league a little bit. But that trade, 2 Hall of Famers, worked out great for everybody.
Well, George, I know you like to come up with Detroit topics. This time I helped you.
Yeah, you sure did. Obviously, Terry Sawchuk was one of the greatest Red Wings of all time. His number is retired at Little Caesars Arena. He's had a great stay in Detroit, and like you said, guys, I mean, it unfortunately was marred by a couple of different things. Well, I know one of the things that bothered Jack Adams, the general manager. He told Sawchuk to lose a bunch of weight, and then after he had lost weight, he just didn't seem to be the same. I mean, he wasn't the same. He was I'm not lethargic, but he just didn't have the zest. And I don't know, you look back on stuff like that. Jack Adams made a great bit of noise about that. But again, he had some years where he struggled. There's some talk about him having some mental issues, which back then, of course, you didn't get the kind of help that you or I or an athlete, for that matter, obviously gets when they have some issues to take care of mental health. But Johnny Bucyk was great. I mean, this guy was a fantastic player, Hall of Famer, of course, we know that. But Sawchuk too was a Hall of Famer. I think it did work out for both teams, and I'm glad he did return to Detroit. But unfortunately, he died early age, and that was another terrible time when people remember that when he passed away. But I really think that, I've always admired Sawchuk. Unfortunately, as old as I am, I still didn't get a chance ever to see him play, but of course, I read a lot about him.
It's funny. I actually have a picture of Terry Sawchuk here in my office that I have, and it's
great.
My dad actually gave it to him behind the pipe. Terry Sawchuk's pretty good. Cody, I know this one may be a little bit.
No, I remember this trade like it was yesterday. But I have no comment on this.
I know, that's okay. It's on the list. But I'll tell you what I'll do, though, Alan, I'm going to bring this a little closer to home. You know what Terry Sawchuk and Roberto Luongo have in common?
I don't even want to guess. You tell me.
They wore the number 1, and they're both retired.
Okay, them and 100 others. Goalies always wore number 1 before expansion, before the 2 goalie system. Then the second goalie wore number 30.
Now right, and then 31, 35. But think about it.
I'm waiting for them to get to 3 digits soon.
Yeah, I'm waiting to be too. But I figure I'm going to add a different fact to the whole thing. But the reality of the situation is, Luongo wore the number 1. Sawchuk wore number 1. What they have in common, they're both in the rafters of their respective home arenas. All right. All right, we're going to go to a station break shortly, but I want to get this one out. I think George is on a roll tonight coming on this show because I have another Detroit topic. This one's a pretty easy one, though. The White Red Wings broadcasting crew is actually recognized as the number 1 broadcasting crew, and they are led by Ted Daniels and Mickey Redmond. Alan, I know you've seen these guys a lot over in Sunrise. What are your thoughts about Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond?
Well, I can't say I've seen them that much. Obviously, they're very accomplished at what they do. I mean, I've watched them a few times on TV, but I don't see them every day. But I know they've been recognized as two of the best. So that's all I could say, and I certainly don't disagree with it.
Yeah, Ken Daniels to me has been an ultimate pro, and Mickey Redmond, I've always idolized him. Here's an interesting fact though that I'll throw about Mickey Redmond. He's the first 50-goal scorer in Detroit Red Wings history, and he scored that goal against Ron Lowe of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Gordie Howe had 49, and then he followed it up. I believe he had 52 his first year, and then he had 50 his second year. Hi, JD Wyatt. Glad to see you on the show. Good to have you on, Coach Gordie. We're doing great work. Josh and Cyberooski were in early, and they're probably out there having dinner. Because since they don't talk about food subjects, they're probably eating it. Won't get into that, but they'll be listening to the show at a later date. But as I said before, yeah, Mickey Redmond's the first 50-goal scorer. The second one is actually Danny Grant, also of the Red Wings. So, but well deserved by these two guys. I know that there are a lot of other clubs listed. I don't have the time to get into them, but the Red Wings, I've watched these guys a lot. Mickey Redmond knows the game like the back of his hand, and he's gotten a lot of national television gigs over the years as well. And then they also had, Ken Daniels is pretty good. But one of the guys who actually, another guy that you have in common here with Detroit and Florida was a guy by the name of Dave Strader. He was here for a short period of time. He passed away early, but he's an also connection as well. So, George, we know you're going to be a little loaded on this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, they are really a great duel together. And you know what? Even they both had to overcome some personal challenges. Of course, Ken lost his son, and Mickey, of course, has been hurt. Struggled with celiac disease for many years. But they're both, they're at a point now in their career. And you know what I like about them too is not only the fact that Mickey played for both Montreal and Detroit, but Ken Daniels started out where Hockey Night in Canada. Mickey Redmond, Hockey Night in Canada. So that to me was always the Stanley Cup of broadcasting when you were a part of the Hockey Night in Canada crew. And then, of course, the road led back to Detroit, an original 6 team. But they've always got a great enthusiasm, no matter how the Wings are playing, and excitement in their voice. And they're just very smooth. They're really great as a team. I really admire them. They've been together so long, and they've won different awards, each one of them, of course. Mickey's in the broadcast wing of the Hockey Hall of Fame. Ken will be there one day too. There's no question about it. Both Kens on the radio side, Ken Cal as well. Yeah. I'm not totally surprised, Scott, but I'm happy for both of them. Yeah.
Hi, George Boboris. Glad to see you in the chat room. I know Cody's probably another one that you're not too familiar with, but obviously we're trying to cover all the events. Anything you want to say about these two guys? They've been around for a while. Or why don't you list a couple of the broadcasts we have in Anaheim, and maybe they'll be a little bit more familiar with what we're here.
Well, we got Brian Hayward and John Allers. I believe both of them have been there since day one for the Anaheim Ducks, back when they were the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. Wow. So they're very familiar voices. I said I've loved them. I've hated them. I do listen to other from time to time, hear other broadcasters, and the excitement they brings a lot more than what I've heard from the Ducks side and even the Kings side sometimes. So like I said, I've never hated Brian Hayward and John Allers. They've done a great job. That they'll give you a good time every time you listen or you're watching. So they're a great listen and everything.
And Cody, John and Scott and Alan, Ehlers used to be with the Vipers. Yeah, the Detroit Vipers. He did there.
Okay.
Long time ago. But I'm glad that he's doing well, and I did not know he was still there.
Yeah, John Allers and Brian Hayward. Yeah, they're still there. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
Well, we like to have a little spin about hometown broadcasters are able to do that. I'll go to one more topic, then we'll go to a station break, and then we'll continue to move along. Alan, you having a good time right now?
Absolutely.
All right, Candy, why don't you give that station break right now?
I was just going to say, I've listened to Ken Cal and Ken Daniel and they are really good. I really enjoy their broadcast. So just wanted to put my 2 cents in before I gave a station break. So
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
And by the way, Candy Emily will have Fire Up after this show is over. We're scheduling it for around 9:30 because we knew we were going to have a lot of ground to cover. And when you have a guy like Alan Greenberg out there who's been around this 9 million years like we all have, it's always great to have Alan's stories out there. And it's just
I
really
can tell
fun.
stories until 9:30 tomorrow.
Well, let me tell you what, Alan, I look forward to having you back on future shows, and I hope you're having a lot of fun that you'll want to be on future shows so you and I can continue to work together. And so it's been a treat having you on tonight. All right, Candy, go to the station break while you're at it. You give my voice an opportunity so I can get a little bit of liquid.
sounds good. South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. And the foreword was written by another panelist tonight, Mr. George Eichhorn. Great job, guys. Great book. Great read. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. Get your copy today. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is a plethora of great content. So go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be iHeartRadio, Apple, Deezer, Castbox, you name it, we're there. If you like to listen or watch a podcast about baseball, we talk Monday nights. Tuesday nights is football. Wednesday nights, you never know what you're going to get on the Sports Exchange. Thursday nights on Sport Wrap is hockey. And then it's Fire Up. And again, you never know what you're going to get on Fire Up as well. If you'd like to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to the program.
Thank you, Candy. Well done. All right. Dave Hackstall is joining the Colorado Avalanche as an assistant coach under Jared Bednar's staff. He built the first original coach for the Seattle Kraken. What are your thoughts about Dave Hackstall? I thought he's a pretty good coach. He had a great collegiate career, went to the Philadelphia Flyers. But, here's the thing, Ellen. This guy's pretty good. Do you think he ever sees another head coaching gig? And what are your thoughts about Dave Hackstall in general?
You never know. I mean, there's so many people out there. I don't know Hackstall very well. I can't say that, but he came into some tough situations in Seattle. It was a new expansion team, but he didn't have the benefit that Vegas had with the draft and the wheeling and dealing that they did before. So he did as best he could, built up a team, built up a good base, I guess you call it, with the team. They'll eventually be going places. Successful in college, hasn't yet seen the real success in the NHL, but he will. And he's I would say, how would you say it, young enough that he still could communicate and relate to all the players. I think he still has a good future ahead of him.
George?
Yeah, I mean, it's still very early, of course, and this is, I think, season number 5 coming up for the Kraken. They, of course, like you mentioned, they're, the expansion team, but they've got a great following there in Seattle. They're really, hopefully, turning the corner on the last year or so. I mean, they didn't improve a whole lot. They kind of still were obviously out of it, being 35-41 this past season. But I really think that especially with an expansion team, you got to get somebody in there that works well with young people, that can work with the kids, as they say. Now, the roster doesn't exclude veterans. I don't mean it that way. But you got a guy that does have some college experience, and you got a guy that really is patience is so important, as we know, with these new teams. Or if you do a complete makeover on your team in hockey, the NHL, you got to stick it out. And you give this guy a chance. And I kind of agree with you that, given a little bit more time, hopefully, they're going to want some more wins this year move up from 35. But I think Dave's the right guy. I really do.
Yeah, to get another job somewhere else, you'd say?
Yes, exactly. Because of the fact that he has had experiences with, like I said, with expansion with younger players on the roster, and obviously some veterans as well. So he deserves it.
Cody, you
Yep.
were on the West Coast. You had a chance to see Dave.
Me and my wife and a couple friends, we actually went to Seattle. So I actually did see a game in Seattle live, and the Ducks happened to play. But this is when they were bottom of the barrel, bottom.
Right.
Great atmosphere. I mean, he coached them well those first few years. I mean, one of the years he literally took what got them past the Colorado Avalanche. They were the defending Cup champions, and they beat them in 7 games. And I know he's a defensive minded coach, so I believe that's a good fit for him in Colorado to go there and to learn more under Jared Bednar, who's had a great career. He's won in the ECHL, the AHL, and then now the NHL. I think that's just great for his career, and hopefully he'll get another NHL job within the next year or two.
See, I think Seattle gave up on him a little bit too quickly.
I think so too.
I do. It's not like the upgrade Dan Bilesma did anything. He was a one and done after 1 year. Now they're back and trying.
Right.
I have nothing against Dan Bilesma, was a Stanley Cup winning coach. He was an assistant with the Wings, but I think they should have kept Haxall around another year. Bilesma one and done. Nothing against Dan per se, but now they've had 3 coaches in the last 3 years. Not a good look. All right. Well, the NHL puck drop will begin on October the 7th. 3 games. You have the Blackhawks and the Panthers. I believe that's the early game. Does that start around 5 o'clock, I think, or
4 o'clock, I believe. 4 or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a late afternoon game. Then you have the Penguins and the Rangers and the Avalanche and the Kings. First of all, what are your thoughts about the Panthers game starting at 4 or 5? What I like about the matchup is you have an original 6 team, but a little bit earlier. But ESPN tends to do that where they'll have that early game and then the other ones fall into place. I don't really have a problem with the 4 or 5 o'clock with it being the opening game. But again, other people might disagree with me on that.
I would say that working people and people going to school might have a little difficulty. I personally love it because I go to the games, I get back at a reasonable hour. My wife is happy; she's not worried that I'm on the road late at night. So I personally love it. But that's just me. I think for an occasional ESPN triple header, of course, it's fine, but not as a steady event.
Well, no, I agree with it. It's just an opening day. I mean, they do that in Major League Baseball all the time where they'll have a lot of games early and later on. I agree. Steady event, it doesn't work because you have the working people. But in this particular case, once again, the intrigue here is you have an original 16 with the Chicago Blackhawks. And if that isn't even more interesting, how about the fact that Spencer Knight could be in the pipes of the Blackhawks and Seth Jones too?
He was very much liked in Florida. He was very popular in Florida. So it should be an interesting reception.
All right, George.
Yeah, that is a bit unusual, but let's look at it this way. Okay, and I know I'm comparing 2 different sports, but baseball, they've always had afternoon opening day games. Of course, people get used to it. It's not that bad a stretch for them to start it at 5. Granted, I guess you would say maybe they would have kept it for prime time because of the fact that they're going to raise the banner and everything. But they wanted a solid lead in. ESPN, like you said, is doing a triple header that day. And they have grabbed one of the original 6, even though it's a struggling team, as we know, a franchise, the Blackhawks. But all the focus, obviously, is going to be on the Panthers with the cup there and raising the banner and all that. But yeah, ESPN is a triple header on October 7th. And they're going to follow that up with 2 other games. And I think I read in the Sportsnet and TVA Sports in Canada are also going to do all 3 games. So it's be quite interesting and quite exciting, I think, for the league to have a triple header on opening night, if you will. So a little bit different on the time, but I think it'll be okay.
Well, the NHL's getting all this publicity. Once upon a time, they couldn't buy a national television contract, and now they're getting one. And think about the fact that former Red Wings coach Jeff Blashill is the coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, and that'll be interesting as well. He obviously was with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Wings prior to that. But all right, Cody, what are your thoughts? So you got the LA Kings on the back end of this thing.
No, yeah, I love the triple header thing. I think it's a great, and especially got East Coast, West Coast on there. I just wish the Panthers were playing a better team, to be honest. I feel like the thrill of the game would have been a lot better. than the team that was just a lottery team this last couple of years.
Yeah.
But, you know, and they haven't really done much in the off seasons or this last off season. So, you know, I think they're going to be fighting for another lottery spot this next coming year. I just wish, like, I know it's an original six. I just wish it was a better opponent. Like it would have been, I think it would have been better if it was either Boston. So that way you got Marchand and, you know, against his former team right away. I think that would have been great. And in the Penguins and Rangers, you got Mike Sullivan coaching against his former team and Crosby going against his former coach. I mean, that's a great matchup right there. And then Avalanche versus Kings, you know, hopefully they bring back that Korean senior citizen harmonica to do the national anthem there just to cap off the night. I think that'd be great.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, all right. Let's talk. The NHL will begin an 84-game regular season, 26-27. What are your thoughts about this one, Alan? You get 2 more games.
When I started following the game, it was a 70-game season, and I read stories about players who were still playing, like Rocket Richard and some of them, who, when they started their careers, it was a 50-game season. Rocket scored 50 goals in 50 games. I think it's getting to be a little too much. It's a long season. Team that goes all the way to the end, plays 100 or so games, plus whatever they have in the middle of the season, would be it Olympics or whatever it is. I think it's a little bit too much and getting risky. I mean, for teams that go to the final, their off season is very, very short, and you need time to rest up and heal and just chill out for a while. I think, you know, money talks all the time, but I think it's too many games.
Yeah, you think that's the case with the Panthers, but they didn't give up their Stanley Cup too easy. They still played longer than they repeated. Then I'll ask you at the end of the show as we wrap it up whether they'll have a chance to three-peat. But George, 84 games.
That's a lot of hockey, just like Alan said. And the fact is that they're building in this, the Christmas break. They're building in, of course, this time, like you mentioned, Alan, it'll be the Olympics in Italy coming up in February, I believe. And I really think that I liked it better when the NHL was a little ahead of the NBA as far as the schedule goes. They used to start at least a week or two earlier than the NBA, and they used to end a week or two earlier. Doesn't happen that way anymore because of these breaks that are built in, the 84 games, because of these off days, or let's call them international competitions / all-star games. You're going to have downtime. But the fact is that I just don't like hockey in June. I'll be honest with you. I don't like it being dragged out that far. I've never been a fan of that. And I really think that someday maybe, but they want the revenue. They want the money. They want to build their team and pay for their team and their staff and everything else. It takes a lot of money to run an NHL team, as we know. So I don't see anything around the corner that's going to shorten it. And you can't schedule more games with less days off. The players, the wear and tear on their body. So I'll end it there. I'm just saying its season is too long.
Is that it? It took you that long to go say that the season took too long? Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Really? Seriously. I should have said it right off the bat. Sorry, Scott.
I'm kidding with you, Eichhorn. I've been doing that, kicking you around for 47 years. Nothing's going to ever change anyways. All right, Cody. Let's see if you can give me a longer answer than what Eichhorn just gave me. Please don't. My voice has to make it to the end here.
Oh, yeah.
No, like I agree with George 100%. Like the season's already too long with 82. You know, I know the main reason why they're doing it is so that way teams can play their division rivals every 4 times every year. But there's probably better ways of doing that without making these players play more. And then especially we got, like what George said, we got the international breaks, you got the All-Star games. Now and then we just talked about earlier, the load management. If we keep going the way we're going, we may see load management, and that's not what we want. You know, I thought 80. I even think 82 is too much. I feel like if they really want to do it, when you play the other conference or your like for the West, like if you're in the Pacific Division, you don't need to play the Central Division people 3 times every year. You play 1 home, 1 away, and then all the rest can play against your division, and you're playing less games that way. So I
Okay,
feel like that's a better way of doing it.
This question is for Alan only. I only asked because I asked Neil Smith this last night. So this is just strictly for you. Okay, Alan. Do you think that Wayne Gretzky could have scored as many points playing in the original six as he did with a watered down NHL? Because I personally don't think he would have amassed that many points. But you've covered the game for a while. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, probably not. Don't forget the original six. Of course, the game was so much different then and so much slower.
Right.
But until Boom Boom Jeffrey and Bobby Hull came along, nobody scored 50 goals. I don't think he could have, because the defensive talent was just too much, too great then.
And even with 12, it would have been difficult, because then you add, you bring in Dave Schultz and the Broad Street Bullies. Can you imagine if, George and I lived in the Dead Wings area when Brian Watson was the attraction, and the Red Wings and the Philadelphia Flyers were playing, and they were the two teams with the most penalty minutes in the league, just to make it interesting in Olympia. Well, when you had 12, but I agree, Boom Boom Jeffrey, my God, that guy was a bruiser. He really, really, really was. And Neil said the same thing. I know it's comparing errors, but I still I know you've covered the game a while. And as I was thinking, I got to ask Alan this. George, you and I could talk about this all day long. And we already have, because we've already established we don't think he would have. But Alan obviously has been around the game long, with the range. He's been well traveled. So glad to get that out there. All right, I want a few more topics. We're doing real well on time, by the way. But there's a lot to get to. We're trying to make sure this is a very big summer update, and that's why we're covering a lot of these particular topics. The NHL and the NHLPA have ratified a 4-year CBA agreement. You're glad that there's peace, Alan, for at least another 4 years.
Absolutely. Everybody's happy.
Okay, George?
Well, yeah, I'm glad that they've done that. Obviously, you don't want to have another work stoppage like we've seen in other sports and in the NHL as well. I'd never like to see that, so I'm glad they were able to work it out. I appreciate the efforts put forward by both the management team and the Players Association to get that done. I think it's good news, definitely, for hockey.
Cody?
Well, for the first time in my lifetime, that we finally have a peaceful CBA agreement, and I think this is like the perfect time to do it, especially the Stanley Cup we had, not this last year, but the year before, with the Florida and Edmonton, how that series went. It was great. And then we had the Four Nations that really skyrocketed. Hockey's really on the up and up right now. And if we would have had a stoppage, all that work was going to be for nothing. So I think this is great that they got it done so far in advance. Everyone's agreed. I don't agree with all the new rules, but it's not my opinion. They don't care about my opinion, but I think I'm just glad they got this done. And that way we don't have any stoppage of play.
Yeah. Gary Bettman, hats off to you for this one. You got it done, and they don't have to worry about it. All they have to do is focus on growing the sport. All right, when we talked about the Vegas Golden Knights, and they've begun contract extension discussions with Jack Eichel on a long-term extension. He's 28. He's in the final year of an 8-year, $80 million deal. What are your thoughts about Jack Eichel, Alan? This guy has done a pretty good job in Vegas, hasn't he?
He's a great player. What can I say? Not too much you could say about that. They need him. They want to make it. They have to make a deal with him. Simple as that.
George?
Well, yeah, they've really set the bar very high, that Vegas has, for expansion teams coming into the NHL. And Eichel, yeah, he's a valuable part of that. And they just, they've kind of had a little magical touch there. And all the naysayers that said, oh, hockey will never make it in Las Vegas, or this sport won't make it. Well, anyways, the Vegas Knights have done a great job. And certainly the negotiations will be tough. No question about it. They always seem to be. And but yeah, he's done a good job there. No question about it. One of the stars.
Well, Cody, you see enough of him on the West Coast. What are your thoughts about good old Jack?
Yeah, sadly, I've seen a lot of him, and good and bad. I wish I wanted the Ducks to trade for him so bad, but him going to Vegas was, I think, the best fit for him personally, in my opinion too. And I don't remember anything when he was in Buffalo about how good his defensive game is, but ever since he got to Vegas, he's probably one of the best not the best, because obviously it's going to be Barkov, but I think behind him it's Eichel. Eichel's probably one of the best two-way centers that we have in the game, easily top 3. and he's scoring 100 points, and he led the Vegas to help Vegas win that Stanley Cup, and to be honest, I didn't think that contract was going to pan out well, right away, but now you need to pay him more.
Well, here's the thing about this situation. Buffalo did not want Eichel to have a particular surgery, so they didn't want him to do. And Vegas said, we'll go along with it. We'll take a shot at this thing. Because I hear, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong on this, okay, that the odds of players coming back from that surgery were pretty remote, weren't they? If I understand correctly. And as it turns out, Vegas said, yeah, we'll do it. Now Vegas gets Eichel, and you have a relatively young franchise who's got a superstar, and you're building a tradition around this guy. So not only did you take the risk of a surgery, you've got a guy whose number is going to end up hitting the rafters there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think of the dynamics of Eichel's arrival there and how it turned out all the way around? It's led to that extension.
Well, it was a strange story when it happened, but
yeah,
worked out, and no doubt about the man's ability. He's a great player and very valuable to the franchise.
Okay, easy one for you guys. You guys are doing a great job with all these questions. Best part about it, we don't have that many more topics left because we're going through them real quick. I expected more time, but we're doing really, really well compared to other shows. Alan, you're getting off easy compared to what Mike Santos has had to deal with. And in fact, even I could go ahead and have the two of us, so we could be going anywhere about 90 minutes, and we're not even near that with just a couple less topics to go. All right, so will Sidney Crosby reach 2,000 points in his career? He needs 313. Yes, George, we're not talking about area code 313. We're talking about 313 points. All right, Sidney Crosby, 313. You think he's going to get it, Alan?
Oh, it'll be tight. I mean, he's going to be 38, I believe, in August. If he goes at a point a game, it would take close to 4 years, probably. So he's been going at a point, more than a point a game at this advanced stage. So there's no reason why he can't. But that's going to be awful tight.
George?
Well, yeah. I mean, Sidney, if anybody can do it, it would be him. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is now a latter part of his career, and obviously, nagging injuries there could be. You never know what he's going to run into. I'd like to see him get it. I know the people that don't like him are very vocal why they don't like him. But I mean, this guy may have gotten a bad rap from some fans that don't understand totally what's going on. I really think that he is definitely first ballot Hall of Fame. We all know that. And yeah, I'd like to see him reach that. If can he do it? I don't know. I'm going to say 60-40 for yes. 60-40% like that. 60-40. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't bet again.
60% chance.
I wouldn't bet. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say his supporting cast now is not as good as it was a few years back, which will factor into it.
Yeah, and that's where I have my doubts because of what you just said, Alan. It's his supporting cast. You don't know how long Malkin's going to stay in there. You're not sure what the situation with the coaching situation since Mike Sullivan's gone either. So I think that might factor in it. So I have my doubts. I'm hoping he does it, but if I were a betting man, and I'm not going to put my money in that pot. Go ahead, Cody. You close it out. A few more to go.
I think the main question is, if he does hit it, is it with the Penguins when he ends it? That could be the question. Because like they're on the. I mean, unless they win the lottery and Gavin McKenna comes in, then yeah, I could probably see him probably getting it. But as of right now, it's going to take just under 4 years, and that's at a point per game. So I hope he does get it. I'm like, I think the opposite of George. I'm like 40-60 on it that he gets it, unless he somehow ends up on McKinnon's line and he's getting 100 points a season. But I think that's the only way he's going to get is if he goes to on another team and maybe joins his buddy over in Colorado with McKinnon. I think that's the only way he gets it.
We're going to take a little trip for a battle on the ice and do a little compare and contrast tonight. Bobby Hall versus Gordie Howe. How do you like that one? Everybody loves this one. Of course, Cody maybe not so much. But you did have Paul Correa who donned the number. Did he wear the number 9, right?
He wore number 9, yep.
Oh, there you go. So we got Paul Correa. So we have a number 9 here and Paul Correa. So, and then we've also had a number 1 in Sawchuk. And we and Luongo. Now we have a Paul Correa. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little bit of and if you don't want to participate in this drill, Cody, it's okay. We'll leave it to George. So you
I'll
have
sit this
Bobby
one out.
Hall.
It's fine.
That's okay, no big deal. Like, but we have Bobby Hall played 1,063 games, one Stanley Cup, 610 goals, 1,170 career points, 2 Hart trophies. Whereas Gordie Howe, 1,767 games, 4 Stanley Cups, 801 goals, 1,850 points, and 6 Hart trophies. Now, the one thing I will say about Bobby Hall is this. Those numbers could have been a little higher if he did not defect early to the WHA and played for the Winnipeg Jets. And I know Gordie Howe subsequently played there. But what are your thoughts about when you compare the Golden Jet versus Mr. Hockey, Alan?
It's hard to compare them because they were both just dominant, outstanding players. Their style, I guess, was a little different. As strong as Howe was and as hard a shot he has, he didn't have the mean streak that Howe had. I mean, he didn't go around with his elbows flying like Howe did. But both of these guys were franchise players, and no doubt. If Howe was in the league longer, of course he would have been right up there with Gordie Howe. So I mean, you can't really compare one against the other because they were both just great players.
Well, you think of Gordie Howe. Think about it. This guy has a Gordie Howe hat trick named after him. I don't think Wayne Gretzky would have been on the. I don't think Wayne Gretzky is capable of a Gordie Howe hat trick. But I will say this before I turn over to George. Remember, George, when we were at the Silverdome and I took that picture with Gordie Howe, my arm was in a sling, and Howe had his elbow right in my jaw. So it was a great. You can get that unless, and he was actually. I was actually a picture with Bob Reynolds, and George is in the background with his photo. If you ever get a look at it, Alan, I'll show it to you. But we know where you're going to go. But what are your thoughts about this, anyways, George? It does bring back some good memories for us, though.
Oh, it does. It does. And I think, Alan, you're spot on. Gordie has the edge because of the feistiness in him and the fact that he was a great defender. He was not afraid, as we all know, to give you that elbow. And I think that toughness, I think, the Golden Jet was more flashy. There was more flashy. He is more like, a little bit more like Gretzky in that manner. I don't think that it's easy to compare them, but I'm going to give the edge to Gordie because of his all-around play. But as you mentioned, Scott, good point about the Jet being in the WHA, and of course Gordie was for a little while also. And it really is a great matchup. I mean, it really is. And the two teams hated themselves; they despised each other. We know that. Those games were unbelievable. That rivalry between Detroit and Chicago, unfortunately, is so far away from what it used to be. But there were so many great games between those two clubs. But that's what we had. When we had 6 teams, all those teams had rivalries going.
14 games a year, 14 times a year, and often back to back.
Back to back, they would take a train ride. They'd play each other Saturday, take the train, and get to the next town by Sunday. It was a totally different world back then. But of course, I'm going to give Gordie an edge. But it's a close. They're both great players, obviously Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there's no doubt I'll give Gordie the edge. So I'm going to throw a hypothetical at you, Alan. I'm really curious about, okay? You and I obviously dealt with COVID-19 when we were dealing with the Panthers and the divisions were a little bit realigned. But let's just say hypothetically there is some expansion, okay, going on. And I have a feeling that there probably will be. We'll be doing an actual special show on August the 6th with a guy by the name of Cliff Neal. That'll be on the Wednesday night edition of the Sports Exchange. I'm glad George will be on that one because you definitely won't want to miss it. Well, let's just throw a hypothetical. Wouldn't it be interesting if you had expansion and all the original 6 teams were in one division, Alan? Wouldn't that be something else?
It would be interesting, and it's not really inconceivable because they're all geographically, they're all in the east, northeast, and traveling from Chicago to New York or Boston is not really the way it was back in the original 6 days when they went by train. So that would be interesting, although it's been so many years that original 6, it's an expression, and it doesn't really mean anything now because they're all, the teams are, so many teams and the talent is scattered. So there's no real, other than for the sake of hockey history and hockey lore, there's no real meaning of original 6 anymore.
Yeah, but Neil Smith and I were talking about this a little bit last night, And the one thing that we both agreed on, if you're a player and you have a chance to play for an original six team, the one thing about hockey players is they have a much better history of the game than the other sports. So they would probably tell you, if I get a chance to play for original six team, I'm going to go. Would you think that is that something that you might agree with?
Probably. Hockey players have a certain culture, a little different culture than other sports, and they're very into tradition and ritual and history for sure. Original 6 days. I mean, guys like me who were around then, we could talk about it, but it was indescribable when you look back at it. When the Rangers would be playing, let's say Toronto. I lived in New York. I went to the Ranger games as a kid. They'd play Toronto or Montreal on a Saturday night. They'd be beating the hell out of each other. They end up on the same train coming back to New York, but they wouldn't pass each other. They wouldn't go. A team wouldn't go to the dining car because they'd have to pass through the other guy's car, the other team's car. And the next day, they're right back on the ice. So you talk about rivalries and animosities. There was plenty of room for that.
Yeah, they can't imagine there was a lot of fraternizing back in the day.
None. Zippo, zero.
Yeah, it was
just look at Patrick Kane. All he plays for is original six teams: Chicago, New York, and Detroit.
Yeah,
excellent
point. Yeah,
and actually, you know what's funny? I do have an interesting fact about
too.
Gordie. I do have an interesting fact about Gordie Howe and the Gordie Howe hat trick. You know, he only ever had two career Gordie Howe hat tricks.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
It's named after him. He doesn't even have the most, but
he didn't have that many fights either in his career. Not very few, because nobody wanted to. I'll tell you, it might change a little bit. Give me a minute for this. I'll tell you a Gordie Howe story.
Sure, take it. I love your story.
This is one of my favorites of all time as a hockey long-timer. About, I would say, 12, 13, 14 years ago, when Gordie was still doing some PR work for the Red Wings and for the league. He was in Florida for some event. I don't remember what it was, but he was up in the press box, and he was in his early 80s that time, and he was in the kind of the early stages of dementia at the time. And he was talking to one of the owners of the Panthers, who I didn't realize was one of the owners at the time. And I barged into the conversation, and I said hello to him. I said, Gordie, I was at Madison Square Garden the night that you and Louis did your dance. Now, that was Lou Fontinato, it was a classic fight in NHL history, and it was in 1959. And when I said that to Gordie, his eyes just lit up. And it was like he didn't have dementia. He turned around to me, and I couldn't shut him up. He described blow by blow. He said, Louis never hit me once. And he went on and on and on. And he said, when Louis and I both retired, we became fishing buddies. But the ironic part of it is, and this is what stood out the most, is when we finally broke up because somebody had to take him to go somewhere. I said, great talking to you, Gordie. And we shook hands. And this guy was the toughest SOB who ever played the game. Yeah. And his handshake was so weak at the time. It really hurt because he was an old guy. He was losing it. That really hurt.
Yeah, that's a great story. But you know what's so good about your story, though, Alan? And that's this. I met Muhammad Ali at the beginning when he had Parkinson's disease. I did. And it was the most unbelievable thing. And when I saw him going through that, and I just tell you what, I took a picture with him, and I take a lot of pride in the picture because you hate to see a legendary, iconic athlete at the end of the line dealing with such a debilitating disease. But you know one thing? We have them called stories that we can talk about on these platforms to share them with our followers and fans. So thanks a lot for bringing that out there as well. All right, one fact we get to, then we're going to ask you the three-peat question, and we'll turn over to Candy at Fire Up. Rogers has officially become the minority owner of the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment after closing 37.5% Bell stake. So now what you have is they're holding 75% of the company's controlling interest, which consists of the Maple Leafs, the Raptors, the Argos, and more. A $4.7 billion aimed at delivering championships. What are your thoughts about that transaction? We know MLSE owns a lot, but let me tell you, the Maple Leafs have got the money, and look at all this capital to show for it, and yet they've been Stanley Cupless since 1967, and the Florida Panthers have made them frustrated the last couple of years. Well, let's talk about the MLSE deal, Alan.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah, why not? Because I love it when you go first because with all due respect, you've been around the game a lot longer. I definitely go ahead and respect your knowledge on this. And these are just numbers that are off the
I-
wall.
I'm
Maple
not-
Leafs are getting them, but they have a tough
I'm
show.
not too familiar with the mechanics of the deal, but I do know that the Maple Leafs are, I believe, the most valuable franchise in the NHL, and
Right.
they have all the money, but money never helped them. I mean, in my opinion, they've just been snake bitten. I mean, a lot of this was bad luck. I mean, every year something else happens to them. They come yay close. This year, 7 games with Florida, they were ahead. They lost last year on, what was it, a double overtime? They lost to Boston in Game 7, and like every year something happens. Something happens to them, and every year I say this may be their year, and it just doesn't happen.
Well, the only thing I'll say is that Red Wings had Scotty Bowman break their drought, but I don't think Scotty's going to Toronto to break theirs. All right, go ahead. But as far as the deal, it is unbelievable. Everybody knows that Toronto is the number one market. They have the Hockey Hall of Fame in that market, and the commissioner's office is there as well. So we all know how big Toronto is to the National Hockey League. George?
Yeah, I mean they had this structure. I guess it goes all the way back to 2012 that they started thinking about this, and this consortium, if you will, made up of these two rivals. You know, Bell Canada and you mentioned Rogers Communications. The deal at that time, and that goes back a few years, was $1.32 billion. But yeah, you got the two giants there, and there's a sort of like a voting priority. I don't know all the details about it, but this ownership structure that they have at the time was Rogers and Bell holding the company 75%, and then there's something called Kilmore Sports at 25%. The thing is that these deals, these ownership deals, are sometimes complex. Not always, though. I mean, usually it is one rich man, let's say, or lady that owns a team, but there's always some interest in minority ownerships and that sort of thing. The fact is that like you mentioned, the Toronto Maple Leafs are part of the original 6, and this team has really struggled. They have really, really had a tough time. They have not won a Stanley Cup going back to the 60s. So, I mean, I hope this works for them, but hell no. Detroit fans don't want to see them win anything. They really don't.
No
They
kidding.
they hate Toronto, as you know.
So is that the biggest understatement on the planet? Really? Seriously? Really?
So I think it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Okay, Cody, bailed George out of this one.
Well, I just because you're the highest valuable team in all of hockey. I mean, just ask the Dallas Cowboys how that is for them. You know, they haven't. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are just the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL. You know, just because you have the money doesn't mean you're going to win it. So, but like I said, but the Toronto does help the NHL. With because everything they do is going to help with the salary cap and everything like that. That's probably what helped us get out of the thing about with COVID. I can't remember what they called it. The escrow. Everything.
Right, okay.
Them winning a couple more rounds. That helps just put more and more money, and that helps the salary cap go up. So, I mean, what they do does help all of NHL as well.
Well, the number one market in the country, obviously their media market is probably the equivalent to what New York is any place else. So they're going to be scrutinized on a much more difficult level. With all due respect, it's not how much money you have, it's how wisely you spend it. And I actually am surprised to see Toronto's drought going this long. I really am. As I alluded to, Scotty Bowman isn't walking through that door to bail them out. And yes, it'll be interesting to see how long this thing continues, because it's harder and harder to get in the playoffs for sure. All right, now the final topic. I know Alan's relieved, but you know what? Alan's been a trooper all night. We appreciate his debut here on Sports Wrap. We've enjoyed it. So this is an easy one, but we're going to let Alan go last this time since he's let off. How does that sound? A nice little change of pace. Oh, that's okay. So, all right. Well, all right, Cody. And obviously we'll be doing more Sports Wraps as we go on during the summer. We have George and I have a different agenda that we're going to work on a little bit in August, but we're not sure yet. More details will be disclosed as we proceed. But anyways, Cody, what are your thoughts? Do you think the Florida Panthers will be able to complete the three-peat?
I mean, it'd be great if they did, but I don't. I think it's going to be hard for them. They're another year older. They're already cap strapped already. I would like to see it just because I've never witnessed a team winning 3 in a row in my lifetime. I think the last time we saw it was the New York Islanders, right?
Islanders in the early 80s.
Yeah, so
No, excuse me, Edmonton after that.
Did they win 3 in a row?
Edmonton, I believe they did after the Islanders.
I thought they won 4 in a row, didn't they?
There might have been 4 in a row. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that they were big rivals back then. When that was an unbelievable. That takes you back a ways. Yeah.
I wasn't even in imagination back then, so I wouldn't even know.
I could hardly tell.
But I mean, in my lifetime, I would love to see a team win 3, and I think out of all the teams that we've seen back to back in the last 10, 15 years, I think Florida is the favorite to probably do it. I mean, the Pittsburgh looked good, but they fell off. Tampa Bay fell off, but Florida's looking good. So I think out of all of them, I think they could be the one to do it.
Okay. George?
Well, actually, I do have to have a correction here, guys. The Islanders won 4 in a row. Then the Oilers won 2 straight, but then the Canadians snuck in there.
Yeah.
And then after that, Edmonton won 2 more. So Edmonton did a 4 out of 5 thing, and the Islanders did 4 in a row.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but getting back to your question, Scott, I mean, if anybody's going to do it, damn, they're a tough team to beat. I'm not going to say no against these guys. I mean, as much as I would like to see somebody else once in a while get in there, I mean, this team has been built, as we talked earlier, way at the start of the show. They're built for the playoffs, and I'm not gonna go against them. So I think they can repeat this year.
Well, all right, Alan. You know what the question is.
Well, okay, it will be tough, but like you guys said, they have the best chance of anyone. Now they've played an awful lot of hockey in the last few years. This off season is going to be very short, and they were pretty banged up when the playoffs ended. But the one thing they have that some of the other teams didn't have is that they won back-to-back, and they maintained almost their entire team. The only starter that they lost was Nate Schmidt. But everyone else is still here, and they're in the prime of their careers. And Zito just has this way of bringing in fourth-liners and depth players that just fill a role, and they come in cheap because they're up against the cap. Like the fourth line this year of Greer, Gadjevich, and Thomas Nosek, every one of them earned, I think, minimum wage, and they contributed a lot. So I don't know how many Stanley Cup winning teams were able to basically maintain almost their entire team after winning a championship, but the Panthers have done it. So if anyone has a chance, it'll be Florida.
Yeah, we added another guy by the name of Jeff Petrie at minimum wage too from the Red Wings, and I think if you get 60, 70 games out of this guy, that's a pretty good acquisition. Here's what I'm going to say about the whole thing. I'm not betting against him, but I think it all comes down to the play of Sergei Bobrovsky is really what it does. And if you can get Sergei Bobrovsky, and he has a pretty good year with solid backup goaltending, then I would say they don't want to give this trophy away. When you get something, you don't want to give it away. It's one thing. It's one thing when the Tampa Bay Lightning had it an extra year longer because they canceled the season. The Panthers don't want to give it away because they won it, and hey, we got it. We're not ready to give it up. But I think it all comes down to goaltending. Is really comes out. If Sergei comes up big again and they have solid goaltending, I give him a shot. Yeah, I don't care what hockey that they play.
Played a lot of hockey last year, and he played every game in the playoffs. So you're right, absolutely right. He's not getting any younger. He works hard. He has an amazing, how would you call it, training ritual. He's well known what his work ethic is. So if anyone could do it at that age, he can.
Yeah, no, I mean I like their chances. I wouldn't go against them. I'm not a betting man. All right, let's go to JD White. I said, What's good, George? Thanks for commenting. George, and let's go ahead. A couple more things. We're going to bring Candy Ebling on in a moment to preview. Fire up, but here we go. We'll put these up. What's good, George? Thanks for commenting. JD White, Candy Ebling, we bring you Fire Up, the country club after we're done here. George, there's another show to follow. This one, stay tuned to the channel. You bet we're going to be handing over to you in a few moments. So with that said, that does conclude this edition of Sports Wrap. However, we started this show this way, and we're going to end it this way. Once again, a melancholy, happy trails and rest in peace to two-time Grammy Award winner, musician Chuck Mangione, Malcolm Jamal Warner. We all know of the Cosby Show, who died in that accident swimming. Ozzy Osbourne to Parkinson's, and last and not least, Hulk Hogan. And Stephen Reichel and I on Preface to the People, we're going to be talking more about Hulk Hogan as well. We started that way. I want to end it that way. So, Alan, I want you to go ahead and let everybody know they get a hold of you. I cannot thank you enough for
My
being on
pleasure.
this show during the summer. I know we have a lot of information that's here, but you know what? Hockey doesn't stop like none of the other sports as well. And that's why we had such a comprehensive, in-depth show. And I'm glad we were able to inform an awful lot of people out there as well. So, Alan, anything else you want to add about your book, how they get a hold of you?
Been a lot of fun. I'm on at the GovMan on Twitter if anyone wants to contact me. I don't post too much on Twitter, but I do have an account on Twitter.
Sounds good. All
At
right,
the
Cody.
GovMan, GovMan.
There you go. You got it. So everybody, please give Alan Greenberg a follow. And I look forward to having him back on at a later date as well. Cody, you know the drill. Everybody know how to get a hold of you. Then George and I, and then a station break, we turn over to Candy to give us a preview of the country club. Go ahead, Code.
Yeah, no, you can reach us at Royally Quacked on all social media and on all podcast platforms as well. And we're actually doing a very interesting episode this Saturday. We're doing what if the NHL did a March Madness style tournament. And I simmed it all on the NHL 25 video game. So I already have the results, but I'm not telling anyone I'm not even telling my dad who won. So I can tell you, it was a very interesting outcome. I was not expecting it. So, but just a little fun for us in the off season.
Well, you know what, Alan, George, Cody, when you have the off season, you can have a little fun doing things you ordinarily wouldn't do anyways. And that's why we want to make sure that we're able to do that. But I want to just let everybody know that on August the 6th, on a Wednesday night around 9 o'clock, we're going to have a pretty interesting show on the Sports Exchange about NHL expansion. That's a show you will not want to miss. I have a guy by the name of Cliff Neal, who's a professor out at Towson State University. And I'm going to tell you, this guy is a wizard on this stuff. So we'll go. So just a little heads up. All right, George, let everyone know, get hold of you. We'll bring Candy to take us home.
Okay, you can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SanGSports99. I'm also a lot on LinkedIn under my name and also on Facebook and that sort of thing. So I go by my name mostly, George Eichhorn. I wrote a book called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. At the end of my columns that appear on the South Florida Tribune website under the contributors section, there's always a little ending of my stories, and there'll be a link there. If you want to hit that link, you can go over to Amazon and pick up a copy of my book. All right. Great to be on with all of you tonight. That was a great show.
All right. Back to Candy Ebeling. Take us home and give us a preview of what's going on Fire Up.
Fire Up's we're gonna talk a little bit about NFL. We're gonna preview the AFC and the NFC East divisions. We're gonna talk a little college football and a little bit more. But the South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and the foreword was written by George Eichhorn. Great job, guys. Old school media versus new school media. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is a plethora of great content. Check it out. If you like to listen to your podcast, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. If you see that red subscribe button and you haven't hit it, liked us, share us, please do so. Also, click the notification button so you know when we go live. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com.
All right. There's an interesting question in the chat room. I don't know if I'm going to present it to you, Alan, if you know the answer. Should Powell continue at the Fed? I don't know what that means.
I'm not going to get into political.
And you know what? I don't allow it either. I just mention it. I'll mention it, and we're not going to go any further. I saw it, and I have a rule. I acknowledge things in the chat room, but nobody is obligated to comment on it. And I'll leave it at that for the sake of keeping everything clean. It's up there. I mentioned it. And Alan, I respect everything about you for taking the fifth on that. There's no problem with that. So meanwhile, we look forward to having Alan Greenberg on a future episode. Alan Greenberg obviously works for a good friend of mine, George Richards. George Richards runs Florida Hockey now, and George is one of the classiest individuals on the planet. George, if you're watching and listening to this broadcast, don't worry, it won't be long before you and I do one by ourselves. So look forward to having him on here. George says, Scott, anytime you want to give me a call, bring me on. Meanwhile, I got Alan Greenberg. And the only thing I'll say about you, Alan, is you're long overdue. And we're looking forward to having you back on again. But I expect us to get together for a bite to eat when you get to South Florida soon enough. So, but meanwhile, that does it for this edition of the Sports Wrap. So on behalf of Alan Greenberg, Cody Spink, George Eichhorn, and our producer, Candy Evling, that does conclude this edition of Sports Wrap. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Fire Up is coming up at the conclusion of this show. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you the next time. Bye now.